I'm talking today with Kristie Stephenson. She is the founder of Story and Myth. And Story and Myth is an island-inspired jewelry brand that focuses on uplifting and empowering the wearer. So I'm going to ask Kristie to introduce herself and talk a little bit about what inspired the brand in her own words and her journey to bringing or birthing the brand.
Yeah, so my name is Kristie Stephenson, and I've always been interested in stories and myths. And when I came back to Jamaica in about 2011, I remember, well, I used to, in Florida, I would do these drawings and work with a metalsmith to have them made into bronze. So he'd make them first in silver, and then, but there were female archetypes that were empowering. And I would go to the jewelry district and I would spend hours looking at all these gemstones. And there were a myriad of ways I could string these pendants. But when I moved back to Jamaica, I had a memory of this seed called Job's Tears. I didn't know the name. My dad had probably gone on a business trip and it was a gift in the hotel room, or he may have bought it from a vendor, a craft vendor. And so I described it to this gentleman that worked with my family for many years. And he came back with what we call a scandal bag, those plastic bags, full. And it just excited me because this humble seed, it comes with a hole, natural hole.
It's natural. I was just about to ask if you had to drill some. It's a natural hole.
It's a natural hole. So it was like one of the first seeds for jewelry.
Yeah.
So I was just, in other words, I had access to getting the most wonderful faceted cut gemstones I could use with my pendants. But I just thought it was like a drug. Just seeing them would just make me excited. And I remember just knowing the potential in it. I don't know why I was so drawn to it. And I was just researching necklaces or jewelry that had intention, and that took me to the Hindu or Buddhist prayer beads. And so those are what I started making. So the one you have on now is 108 beads, plus the 109th bead is the guru bead, the main bead. So I was just making that number or a fraction of that number from the beginning. And so I started first with the necklaces, and then by demand, or listening to customers, because it wasn't something I set out to do. I didn't set out to say I'm going to make this. I just found myself doing it, and I think my family was crazy, like, what are you doing? And I would do these workshops along with yogis.
Yeah.
And I got into a yogi gift shop, and from there the next request was bracelets, and the bracelets too had to have meaning. I don't know why, I just couldn't do up a regular bracelet. And so, incorporating my love of stories and myths, I focused on like the elephant and the properties of an elephant. They're matriarchal. The strongest female is the leader of the pack. In Hindu mythology, the elephant god Ganesh, he's a remover of obstacles, and he's good for people in business. So, I was just very drawn to these symbols that I've kind of always had in mind, and also the telling of stories.
Mhm.
And what's ironic was I had an Indian boyfriend long ago, and his family was Hindu. And I, as a Jamaican, remember thinking, how can anybody like worship an elephant?
Right.
You know, in my mind, I don't think I said it out loud, but my karma is telling all these stories. So
Mhm.
every day I tell the story, not every day, but it's on my website. I'm telling the story of Ganesh, or even this necklace here from the Job's Tears. There's a story that Krishna, the Hindu god, made a necklace from these very seeds for his consort Radha. And it's considered a necklace of love and victory and overcoming obstacles and odds.
Wow.
And, you know, a lot of those stories coming out of India are very, very positive.
Mhm.
I hardly hear any tragedies. They're always overcoming.
Mhm.
Um, and so, you know, that continues to influence my work. And recently, um, African spirituality has started to influence my work.
Yeah.
So, finding out about, for example, I did, I don't have it right here at this moment, but there's a snail shell
Mhm.
that I remember my uncle telling me, because he had this property that had a river running through it. And I remember him saying, you know, Chris, I wish you could do something with this, because I would just love to collect them. I didn't know what I would do with it. And it's a particular type of land snail. And um, I finally got an idea from a trip. I went to Bali and saw something, and I just had to translate that on the shell, which is putting a tassel through it.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes when you go on these trips, you never know what will inspire you.
Mhm.
And so that I had seen a larger shell with a similar concept. So I was inspired and did that with the shell here. But in researching, I'm not sure how I came across it, but it's a creation myth, a Yoruba creation myth.
Mm.
And so this god is sent to, well, the earth is just water. And so the main god sends this god down a chain. So he climbs down the chain, but he's carrying a snail shell, and he throws earth from the snail shell. And that gives, or dirt, soil,
Mhm.
that gives the sea some land. And he also brings a chicken, and the chicken scratches, and that creates valleys and mountains. And the same person also had some palm seeds. So he plants them, and they grow into trees, and they bear fruit, and he makes wine. And he's also given the task of making people. So he's making people from the earth, and you know, they're all coming out fine. And he starts to drink more palm wine, and he
Mhm.
gets a bit intoxicated. And so some of the people come out, which what we would maybe call a physical or mental disability.
Ah, okay.
And so he vows never to, because it's his fault. So he's the patron saint of persons with disabilities. And he's also a unique God in that he's not perfect, he's more human. He made an error.
Mhm.
But I just thought it was full circle because I was always drawn to this shell, the spiral in the shell. You know, it's the golden mean. It's found in, it represents the universe, the cycle of birth, life, death, and again regeneration.
Mhm.
The universe. So to have this shell, and then also the people that make the jewelry. There is a community of artisans I work with, that have disabilities.
Mhm.
And so it's also looking at what disability is, because I also had my grandmother was diabetic, and so she was blind, and her sister was also diabetic, and so she was missing one of her limbs, one of her legs. So I had grown up with that. You know, in Jamaica, people have a stigma for persons with disabilities, and I would say my team, I taught them how to make these things, and they have surpassed me now. They make it much better.
Mhm.
And you know that there's some analogy of with educators about something with, like, you know, testing a goldfish to climb up a tree, or a cow to climb up a tree, or something like that. You know, put the fish in water, it's going to do really well.
Mhm.
So I just feel like with the team I have, this is something, you know, they excel at. It doesn't, their disability here doesn't matter,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much kind of our journey. Everything was very organic. I didn't set out to do any of this. I didn't say I'm gonna do it. You know, it just kind of happened.
Mhm.
And
Kind of like serendipity then.
yes, but there was a point when one of my um, yoga teachers had said, "How is business? What are you doing?" And I really wasn't doing anything with it.
Right.
And I remember going for a swim and really thinking about it. And I remember swimming outside. It was at a beach house, and at a beach house, you kind of know what the water is for the beach house, the sea is.
Mhm.
And the further out you go, you know you're in open water. This is not safe anymore. And so I pushed myself to swim farther out into the unknown and scared myself. I enjoyed it though, but it was just this thing I had to do. And on the drive back to Kingston, I decided to give this thing 100%. And
Mhm.
if it didn't work, then I would just go back to what I would normally do. And so I did.
So on that on that note, you mentioned that you are in Miami and you returned to Jamaica. May I ask why you returned to Jamaica? How that came about? Did you plan to make a life in Jamaica all along, or what happened?
Well, I had always wanted to come home, but was discouraged. And then in 2008 was this big, remember that crash
Yeah.
in 2008?
Hmm.
Um, and I was in the architectural industry,
Okay.
but I was very miserable, and I don't know, I wasn't I just felt like I was on this treadmill in Miami, and if you fell, the treadmill was still going. You had to just keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know, I was just very burnt out, and when I voiced wanting to come back, it was the first time I didn't have any resistance. So I came back, and yeah, I was actually quite lucky because I found a job with someone who had recently moved back from Miami in the architectural field,
Okay.
and I could work from home, and it was a very nice and respectable person.
Hmm.
But I just realized I wasn't happy in that field, you know? And so I had one foot in work, and occasionally I would do these and stop. And so I just decided to just go 100%. And that's what I did. And I think the minute I made that decision, that's when the universe puts people and opportunities in front of you,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I remember one of our first, I would say, big projects. I was just preparing my team prior, and just knowing that this company was using our beads as a fundraiser.
Mm.
And I wanted them to do well. And, just working out the materials and the time and delivering on time. And then I think we delivered early too. And then having them sell off before
Wow.
was a really good feeling,
Yeah. And
So
so you have created you've decided to move forward fully with the company and you've created the structure around it. When did you start? What year was that?
I think I started making these in 2011,
Okay.
but I think I engaged the team in about 2014
Okay.
when I realized I would need, before I would get one and two people to help me. Um, but I realized that I would need a huge lead start. And so it was actually my dad again who told me about this community.
Mhm.
And so that's when I reached out to them. Yeah.
Wow. Um, so you have engaged the community, you're producing, and how has it been to develop the infrastructure around a growing business?
Well, in the beginning, at one point, there were more people. And then what happened, I remember it wasn't for everybody.
Mm.
Somebody said they're really, but it depends because certain people in the group, for them, it's like a meditation.
Yes.
But then for others, it wasn't. Um, so it just, things started to just open up. So I would say it's the team I have now, we create and then supply um, a lot of the hotel gift shops. And due to COVID, all of that had stopped, but it's starting to pick up again. And then in the interim, we were really pushing our website, but that takes a lot of work you know, to promote the website. But it
Mhm.
does work, really promoted.
Yeah. And I attended, I forget the name of the company that put on this presentation, but you were at a presentation where you were talking about e-commerce and some of the tools that have been so useful to you in with your business in bringing the product to your customers. So would you like to share a little bit about that?
Well, with that, I think that was the PSOJ.
Mm.
Um, the link with getting the product out is really the post office. And
Mm.
um, so far I've been really happy with them. They've never lost a package. I can count on like 4 fingers anytime something's been returned. I either knew the person and they just couldn't find the address and it got returned to me.
And you are
Um,
shipping internationally. It's not just,
yeah,
locally. Yeah.
yeah. So most website orders are international,
Mhm.
mainly the US. And I think we're connecting with the diaspora.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I can see the huge potential um, with that as well.
It's massive. Being a part of the diaspora, I purchased your the chain for the masks, which was brilliant that you came out with that at a time to meet a need, and that was delivered to me within 5 days.
Wow.
So I got that package really, really quickly, and I use my mask chain now. So I
Wow.
wanted to talk about um, or ask you to share a little bit about your your posts are as you've mentioned, rooted in yogic spirituality and also Jamaican folklore. So I think when I think of you, I think of like Miss Lou. You know, like Miss Lou was, not that you're Miss Lou, but Miss Lou
I used
was she would, go ahead, say that again.
no, I used to watch her. I
Yeah.
used to live in and I used to watch her on TV. She had this thing called ring ding,
Yeah.
and you gathered around in a circle. Um, and I was at the age where when she would wave and the kids would wave, I would wave back because I thought they could see me waving. But I used to watch her. Yes.
Yeah. And the what you remind me of, or what why I link both of you, is this reverence and around reverence and desire to bring Jamaican stories to fore, back in, not back, maybe they've always been there, but I think you are putting a very interesting spin on it, in that you are doing drawings, you're doing chalk drawings, and I'm gonna ask you to just talk about how that came about.
Okay. Well, the chalk drawings came about during COVID.
Yeah.
So during that time, um, it just didn't feel genuine to do my regular jewelry posts, which might be some adventure or some, like a hand with bracelets and you can see water behind it or the river or something. In Jamaica, we had access to those things, those outdoor things. But while the rest of the world was inside, and I just thought I just didn't feel good to post those things. And also with all these murders that were happening for Black people, and it was in the news, that was also bothering to me. So I in my apartment had these, I had always painted the walls that color. And if people came over, I'd encourage them to draw or write on the walls. And I just, I think the first story I told was a story of Icarus. It was a Greek story. And I had told it before through jewelry, like maybe a year or two ago. But I decided to just draw and then record after. And I found myself doing one like almost every day. And it was during this lockdown period where, I chose to sit and stay with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because normally I would, in Jamaica, you can, we're so blessed here. There's so many healing things, the river, the sea, walking on the grass, nature. I mean, you have access to trees. It's just, I don't know if people here realize what they have, but I was choosing to not do that and sit inside and be uncomfortable. And so it was, I guess what it was also was, you've heard of like shadow work, or
Yeah.
a lot of times people are always encouraging us to be positive and think positive, but there is also space for the uncomfortable, for things that are not feeling good. those feelings are also as valid. And I'm not a fan of trying to force a smile, or I think you should honor where you are. So I was honoring that uncomfortable space, but in that time I was also really motivated to share story, because to me, I guess sometimes I feel I'm not selling jewelry, I'm selling connection.
Yes.
So many times the posting of the bracelet on somebody is an excuse for me to tell a story
Mm-hmm.
about something, whether it's the main charm, what it means, or it could be something with the property of maybe the gemstone. Um, but yeah, that was a product of lockdown and COVID, and I didn't. And the chalk is temporary,
Mm.
and I felt like it was a forgiving medium, in that I could try to draw something, and I just felt my audience would understand if I said this scratchy thing is whatever it was, you would believe me. If I did a square and said that's a house, you would say, okay, it's a house. Like the audience wouldn't reprimand me for not having, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. So
Right.
I made that commitment, or that pact, that it's temporary, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's how I would, it freed me to not overthink it. um, I redraw a lot of times, I erase,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
I wondered about that, your process around that, because your presentation of it is like it's a time lapse video, and it just seemed to flow. So I thought, I wonder if this is a download, which is what it seems like. A download is something that just comes to you or that you're presenting, or if there is editing that's happening. That was what I was wondering really around that.
Well, okay, what happens is, because I started doing these stories, I was on the hunt for stories. So I have all these storybooks now. So
Oh,
I'll get familiar with a story.
yeah.
And, you know, sometimes when I'm doing a story, I will get several sources, just because, and I'll ask different people, especially if it's a common tale, some folklore story, I'll ask different people, because they can provide amazing insight, and it helps you to really see. And although I condense and I only talk for a minute, I'm reading lots and lots of things before.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment when I start to draw, I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do until, I kind of literally a few minutes before,
Wow.
like, okay, I'm going to tell this story.
Uh-huh.
But once I turn the camera on, and I know I'm more concentrating on the story, so it will have a flow. So if I'm talking about the moon in the beginning and then a mountain, I prefer to draw the moon and then the mountain in that order.
Right.
Drawing the mountain first, and I'm talking the moon, and I'm saying moon, but you see me doing a mountain.
Right.
So I like to do that. But apart from that, I do a lot of reading before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in, like, really having a grasp of the story. So one story I did tell was that song. What's it called? It was a Miss Lou. Miss Lou did it. Something with peel head John Crow.
Oh,
Sit on
yeah.
treetop.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this gentleman called Mr. Vivian Crawford, and he is with the Institute of Jamaica. but he is he plays the organ at my mom's church. But
Okay.
I have him on speed dial. So I call him all the time to just understand some things. So I consulted with him a lot for that story. And that story is about the pretentiousness of people.
Mm.
Because he said a jankro is a vulture. He would never be eating blossoms, he eats dead flesh. That's the line in the song. And then the other line is, come girl, let me hold your hand, let we wheel and turn. So it's like, it's long time girl, me never see you, come let me hold your hand. So it's like, I haven't seen you a long time, let us go away and talk for real. So they're trying to leave the pretentiousness of, I should have printed that so I have it up properly to read it.
And I'm thinking, I'm like, I should know this. Like I should, like my sister is a English professor. I'm like, Sherry would know the words to Sherry would know the words to this song.
But yeah, so it was, I was in my apartment, I drew the tree, I drew the jankro, and then I attempted to do a cultural Jamaican dance. So and I had bandana, and I put the bandana on, which is my dress. That's the fabric that Miss would wear. And that fabric came from, I believe it came from India, in that region called Madras. But yeah, so it's researching and so it's also, I guess, a bit of performance as well.
It is. I mean, you have transitioned from making and creating to in performance art. And I just think it's really, really, it's a progression. I think I can see the progression of how this happened as you immerse yourself in the world. You're immersing yourself in the world of Jamaica in an increasingly deeper way, is from a external, just looking in perspective. Would you agree?
I guess, because it's something, once again, I think it's similar to the jewelry in that it was organic. I remember with the jewelry, when I would do it, people would recognize it, would diss it, or like, oh, I'm not wearing that.
Right. It's too humble. It's not
right.
precious enough.
Yeah. And I just would think, just you wait, I'm gonna make this thing really beautiful and somebody would want it. But it's that, I'm not sure, I mean, with the chalk, because it's dismissed because it's not that medium I've only seen a lot on menu boards. Like a chalk menu.
Yeah.
If I don't think I've ever seen that in a gallery, but it's chalk, I think, is something that would be dismissed, similar to how the beads were. But for me, it was removing being the critic on myself. Had I used another medium, then I probably wouldn't share it. I would have been very critical, but the chalk for me was just, it just provided this freedom of non-attachment.
Yeah.
And if I did a dot and said to the audience, that is the world,
yes,
you would believe me because it's part of the story that I'm telling, and I would make other markings and talk about what they were. But as I do them, I think sometimes there is some, I don't know if it's some magic that can happen, but like, you know, I did one for New Year's Day at Jake's in Treasure Beach.
Yeah.
And moments before, I am talking to staff, trying to get stories from them. You know, like I was just doing a lot of research prior, but then in the end, I don't know what I'm going to do until I start.
Wow.
You know, sometimes I'll engage with the audience. But to me, that was like a beautiful moment to start 2021, which is doing one of these drawings for a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I told the story of Treasure Beach in St. Elizabeth, you know?
Yeah, I've been to Jake's. It's a very special place. Yeah. So going back then to the spiritual aspect of your jewelry, and there's something that has been sort of floating around in my mind during our conversation. It's this, I read somewhere that Jamaica sits on a bed of quartz crystal.
Well, I have some here. They sit on a bed of calcite. So just like how I was attracted to that shell,
Mm-hmm.
I always, so as a little girl, when I'd visit my grandparents in St. James, I remember seeing this sparkly thing, and it's called calcite.
So it's
And
not quartz crystal, it's calcite.
right, so it's
Yeah.
kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
Some are translucent, some are a little cloudy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's quite beautiful, but it's found in limestone.
Yeah.
So yes, that's why I think people come here, because we are a vibrating. It's a crystal.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's a crystal.
And do
Yeah,
you know the properties of it? Like what is it? What is it supposed to embody, or what the energy is around it?
I do not. I should look it up really quick. Not off. Not off the
That's
bat.
okay. I'm like, I thought,
I'm trying to do it
I'm like,
because I love that meaning as well.
mm-hmm.
But it's there. You see how fast this thing is. So it says calcite, a white or colorless mineral consisting of calcium carbonate, is a major constituent of sedimentary rocks such as limestone, and is deposited in caves to form stalactites and stalagmites.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the meaning I want. Let's see. Oh, it's taking a bit. Ah.
Don't worry, I'll edit all of this out.
Okay.
It's okay, you don't need to feel any pressure. We're not live.
Why it's taking, I don't know why it's taking so long today. It loaded quickly. Okay, here. Apparently it has healing properties. It improves the function of the kidneys, pancreas, and spleen, and dissolves calcification of the bones.
Mm.
And it strengthens the skeleton and joints.
Hmm.
And it alleviates intestinal and skin conditions, and stimulates blood clotting and tissue healing. So it's a stone of emotional intelligence, and it has an uncanny ability to build a clear and harmonious bridge of awareness between your emotions and your intellect. And calcite reportedly brings wise energy to help one make timely decisions without the feeling of being rushed. That's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
I actually have quite a bit of it.
That
And
you have dug up just acquired, or where did you get it?
I got one from someone who is in the like mining industry,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and then others I've gotten. Like people don't know that I could have it in their backyard.
Yeah.
Especially when people are building,
Mm-hmm.
have to excavate.
Mm-hmm.
You might find it within the rocks, and so I've gotten it from people who are either excavating or it's literally in their backyard.
And do you intend to use it in jewelry or?
I do. I have made pieces for someone,
Oh,
and I actually taught myself really quick to use wire and solder so that the wire could really hold the calcite. So I was using not a torch, but something to heat up I forgot what the thing is called, but it's to kind of I'm applying a medium that will fuse the wire around the
mhm.
stone so it won't fall out.
Hmm.
But that's a plan for me to work with it, but I want to do it in a way that it's quite sturdy. I've tried to drill it, but it would shatter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was something I tried working with in the beginning because I got a huge chunk of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Huh. So another Jamaican story or myth that I'm fascinated with that you have also worked with, and I think is inspired by, is that idea of the river Mumma.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share with us that story?
Yes. So she's one of I actually saw a play as a little girl, a pantomime
Yeah.
in Jamaica. And it
The river
was
Mumma and the golden table.
yeah, yeah. And that's something that put me on to, wow, we have a mermaid here,
Mhm.
But when I lived in Miami, I noticed a lot of Madonnas or Marys,
Yeah. Yes.
right?
Yes.
So these Madonnas and Marys also were mermaids.
Hmm.
Basically, okay, in Jamaica, River Mumma is the guardian of fresh waterways, canals, rivers, and streams. And all the fish in these waters are her children. River Mumma is coming from Africa. So she came with the kidnapped people, the African workforce that was brought to the Caribbean, to South America, to North America. So these people brought their stories with them, and sometimes they mixed also with European stories, because in Africa there's Mami Wata, and Mami Wata has a serpent tail.
Mm-hmm.
Probably what happened is, when you get to the New World and hearing European mermaid stories, the tail becomes a fish tail. The snake body becomes a fish tail. But, in Haiti, they have water spirits as well, known as symbolize.
Mm.
And there's a story that moved me so much, and I heard it years ago, and it was from a Haitian painter, and he was telling me that during the Middle Age, if someone died or was thrown overboard, the Simbi or mermaid would carry the person and swim them all the way back home.
Mm.
And so there's another story that the Atlantic is full of black mermaids,
Ah,
you know?
yeah.
And perhaps the mermaid is kind of whitewashed, and images of her tend to be just white.
Mm-hmm.
But just like, so, okay, I had a friend who organized this bus, and a group of us went. It was, I forgot, it was in St. Anne, and it was a revivalist church meeting. And we got a list of colors of what different things were. So angels were white. You had Archangel Raphael, Michael. You had madras, which is our fabric. Madras
Yeah.
was the color associated with madras, or the character associated with madras was, I think it said wild Indian. But at the bottom, you had gold, and gold was associated with the river Mumma.
Hmm.
And in Cuba, Oshun
Mm-hmm.
is also a river water goddess, mermaid, and her color is also gold. But in the church, she is syncretized with the Virgin Mary.
Aha.
So I always thought that because Jamaica wasn't Catholic, we didn't have the saints to hide behind. So when I was in Miami, I didn't realize what I was looking at or what I was seeing. So I would, I would probably see an image of, say, Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
But Santa Barbara is syncretized with the Yoruba god Shango. And also, there's Our Lady of Charity, which is a mermaid. Not mermaid, hear me.
I was-
figure.
yeah. Yeah.
She's the Cuban patron saint, or the patron saint of Cuba, the mother of Cuba. But in certain traditions, she's also the mermaid. So in Jamaica, I have a friend who was interviewing elderly people in Westmoreland about river maids or
Mm-hmm.
river mumma. And these people were giving first-hand accounts. And I was there for some of them. And one of them talked about if she had water in her yard somewhere, like a vessel of water, the river maid can come.
Hmm.
And she said, even appear in the church. And I was like, what church? And she said, the Zion Revivalist Church, which I am curious to go to just because of that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably closer to what I would probably consider African spirituality. I don't know too much about it, but in Jamaica, I find a fair for African spirituality. And it's just automatically assumed to be something that's evil. And I'm looking at it as from the aspect of these stories, and these stories that came with an African workforce who was consistently vilified and told they were, everything was very negative. And I think that conditioning is still happening today,
Mhm.
you know, hence why I'm probably first drawn to um, Buddhist and Hindu spirituality. Um, so now I'm learning and reading more about the stories and the religions from the motherland, the indigenous ones, not the ones that are with the colonizers then,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have a lot of these stories in a lot of similarities with these mermaid figures. um Brazil, Cuba, Haiti, Jamaica, um and they have different names for them, but in Jamaica she's our freshwater goddess or freshwater spirit. And in these communities where they know about her, um, there is a reference, because in the same community, you know about the scammers,
Mhm.
like people, um, I guess it was the call centers that were here and they're no longer here,
Mhm.
but and the people continuing to scam. There was this river I went to with a friend of mine, and you could see, we were told that the scammers make offerings to the river mama.
Really?
Yeah, but this is like rural Jamaica,
Yeah.
um, and it's something I didn't know about, but it's alive here.
Mhm. You kind of segued really naturally into my next question, which is you mentioned that when you returned to Jamaica, you didn't have any of this outlook. And so having worked and researched in this area, how is that informing your own um, compass, your spiritual compass, if at all?
Um, well, since I started doing this, what happens is that I think you can get very connected with spirits. So if I'm curious about a particular topic and I mention it to you,
Mhm.
what will likely happen is someone might call me and send me something on that thing I just mentioned to you.
Interesting.
And so I find that it happens a lot. Or if you say someone's name, you run into them.
Mhm.
Um, I think maybe these things were always there, but maybe we didn't see them or we're not seeing them.
Mhm.
And then when we do see it, we might, oh, that's such a coincidence. But I think they probably happen more than we realize,
Mhm.
especially when you're in flow. Um, I just think the universe provides, which is something I've always thought, that they provide. It provides you with answers either through people or just little clues.
And for those of us who may not be aware of what it means to be in flow, it's kind of like it's a yogic principle, but can you share with us your definition of being in flow, what that means for you?
Um, I guess when you're in flow, you're honoring how you feel and navigate the world, or you're not reacting. You're not in a reactive mode. So even if someone pushes your buttons,
Mm-hmm.
you might have the perspective to know that your buttons are purposely being triggered or pushed, and you can choose to just not have a reaction. um I think it's just being open and seeing things and seeing coincidences, or seeing it's kind of hard to describe, but it's I guess also being in balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not you're not, let's say, over medicating, or
Yeah.
you're just more clear. There's also a self-care practice, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a ritual, just also taking care of yourself. um and I mean eating right. um I have this thing with, um I want to say the US, but um say companies putting profit before people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're not mindful of where your food comes from, how it's produced, what's in it, and that goes to what you put on your skin. So all these things, I think, um, could make you cloudy. I remember living in Florida and living off of fast food,
Mm-hmm.
and this I was cloudy. I was, um, you know, having something that wasn't providing my body with the best nutrition or nutrients. And um, you can just be existing for years in a fog,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So
Yeah.
I think that flow is, you're kind of trying to, not saying being perfect, but you're mindful of where things come from, what you eat. Um, and I think that main ingredient of self-care can direct you in that way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that excellent sharing on what that means to you. I wanted to go back a little bit. I forgot. I wanted to ask you about the Madonna. You had a Black Madonna project.
Yes. So that project was because in Jamaica I couldn't find any. um in Jamaica, we call her in Jamaica Mary, and
Mm-hmm.
all the Marys I've ever grown up seeing were white. And it wasn't until I was in, Little Havana or Little Haiti, and I would see these Marys that had melanin. They were black. Um, and so I wanted to create one here. And part of me doing that was because of the violence that happens in Jamaica to women and children.
Mm-hmm.
Is very, very common. Um, and so I was choosing that figure, which to me kind of goes back to embracing or dealing with the shadow. So certain archetypes for me dealt with things that were ugly or hideous or horrible, like the atrocious things that were happening to women. I just felt like the Mary I knew, um we have a front guest.
Right, so this is my little nephew Harrison. Harrison, this is Kristie. Can you say hello?
Hi.
I'm talking to Kristie, and I am gonna be finishing my conversation soon, so I'll come upstairs then, okay? No, you can't stay. You have to go back up to mommy and daddy. Go on. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Harrison. Give me 1 second, Kristie. Hold on.
My nephew is 13, but I remember him at that age.
Harrison, you can't hide behind there, guy. Come here. I know you want to stay, but I'll come up and play with you afterwards. Yeah, come on. Okay, hey.
I was saying that the image I have of Mary in Jamaica, which I grew up seeing, to me was passive, and this like this pure white, good, passive kind of image. And I was just researching a lot of archetypes like Kali, the Hindu goddess, who's a misunderstood goddess, but she destroys the ego and the attachment to the body. Hence why she's depicted with limbs around her, a garland of limbs and skulls. But it's I was talking about the shadow and the things that we don't like to talk about or view in society. And so it was these horrible things that were happening to women and children, and wanting an archetype that would do something or take revenge or give you justice. And so the Madonnas I found that were doing that were from other islands that had they had practiced syncretism. So their Madonnas were, patron saints of women and children, or abused women. And when I first placed her in Jamaica, I remember somebody saying to me they thought it was the black arts, but in a negative way. So their essentially was obia. But then what happened was, I had first placed her by this area where the Gleaner Men, which is a local paper, newspaper, and men that sell cigarettes, they started to take care of her. So I remember one Mother's Day, someone wrapped bougainvilleas around her. And yeah, so it was giving Jamaica a black archetype in this Mary figure that I've seen. And there are also Marys of color in European countries. And I believe what's happened is Mary, the image we know in the Catholic Church as Mary, was modeled after Egyptian Isis goddess holding baby Horus. And so that image is known as what the Christians used to model Mary holding baby Jesus. And a lot of these churches in Europe, there's one in Czechoslovakia, Italy, France, that have like very old churches that have black Madonnas. But in Jamaica, we don't have any of that. It's this white colonial figure,
Yeah.
And so it was a kind of empowerment as well, because she represented justice and seeing both the victim or the survivor and the perpetrator.
Yeah. The symbolism is very powerful. Are you still doing that project? Or do you have?
I put a hold on it with COVID, but I would place her usually every Valentine's Day in different areas. So I think right before lockdown, I had placed her or gifted one to Eve for Life,
Mhm.
which is a home for young girls who are living with HIV due to rape.
No, that's a very specific population.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they have one in their garden under a mango tree.
Mhm. Well,
Because I think too that that demographic, um, I've never done a workshop or anything with them, but just knowing about other archetypes throughout the world um, that are powerful or who look like them could make a world of difference.
mhm.
And some of these archetypes have stories that, are about resilience. So that's kind of what the piece represents, because I know when they look at her, that's not an image that they would associate with Mary in Jamaica. But I'm hoping they'll look at her and see something deeper, see someone that looks like them, and maybe have questions, you know?
Yeah, to sort of start a process of inquiry around it. Yeah. So my next series of questions are, it's kind of like my version of a lightning round. And you've
Mm-hmm.
touched on some of these things already. Um, what are some of your, what I call non-negotiables? These are practices that you do on a regular basis to maybe, you have a daily ritual to ground and center you.
Well, recently I started a daily meditation practice.
Mhm.
So I have a straw mat. Um, so weird. I used to do yoga and then I got into straw mats. So I won't use a regular yoga mat, plastic yoga mat anymore.
Yeah.
So I'll use a straw mat in the shape of a yoga mat. And I sit on that and ground, and I light incense and just sit and be quiet. On days when it's really difficult, like I'm too busy,
Mhm.
that's when I actually need to do it. Um, and I found, especially now, because things are so still, sometimes it's just a little uncertainty, that I found that to be quite grounding. Um, and I'm also learning to um, make clear my boundaries and
Mm.
honor how I feel.
Mhm.
And sometimes, depending on certain projects, or so you can tell what feels good and what doesn't, and what path to take or not to take in the future. So I'm listening to myself as well. So if something isn't sitting right, I won't do it.
Mhm. Okay. What are you currently enjoying reading or listening to?
Well, what I'm currently enjoying listening to, there is this thing called, well, Clubhouse, and I
Okay.
didn't know about Clubhouse before.
Mhm.
And so I was invited to speak at someone had created a room on Clubhouse. My friend Koyera created it, and it's sunrise tea time, but they have all these amazing people who are, you know, very spiritual and healing, and it was just, so it's a like a 5 a.m. early morning, like you're listening to the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found it very grounding, and the people in the group have a lot of wisdom, you know.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to that in the mornings.
Nice. And are you a morning person?
Yes, I'm very early in the morning. I wake up very early.
Okay. What fact about yourself most surprises others when they learn it?
What fact?
Mm-hmm.
Probably because I think maybe, well, this one is a little funny. I do have a mermaid tail, and I do like to go on adventures and stuff, but I don't really swim that well. So you should sometimes, to get the shot, it's like it would look a little crazy.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, it's just one of those things. They may give the impression that I'm a water baby, or I love the sea.
Yeah.
But I do love the sea, but I'm also humbled by it. But I have friends who are definitely true water babies, and I'm literally the person that would have on floaties or something, you know, temporarily move away to get the picture and then hang back on the boat. Yeah.
That is surprising, because you do seem like the epitome of, you would be the epitome of like the mermaid, you know, like you have the mermaid life, except that the
No,
mermaid need floating.
no.
I'm picturing that.
I love her stories, and I admire people who definitely can scuba and deep dive. I cannot even get one of those shots because I can't get down that far. So
yeah. That's funny and surprising. Okay, so you talked about your 5 a.m. Clubhouse talks. What do you do after? What's it like, a day in your life as a business owner and spiritual person as you go about your daily business?
wow, well, it depends. So I will do that if so I'll do that. I would either be assembling something for team to make. And there are also different stages of ordering and reordering. So like we make our own tassels. So it's making sure.
Really?
Yeah. So those are handmade.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's like making sure we have enough thread. And there's a certain amount of numbers times we wrap. So I think this one is 108. And the tassel too represents the 1,000-petal lotus, which is a symbol of enlightenment. So it's like making sure team has materials, or I'll be picking up from team, or I will be. I recently discovered Canva.
Yeah,
I'd known
Canva is awesome.
but I'd known about it before, and it kept coming up, and I decided to look into it again. And to me, that's another message from the universe, right? Because in the past, it was, I knew about it, but I was still using my Photoshop. And it kept coming up. And I decided, because it kept coming up, let me revisit this program, which I have.
Mhm.
And I did. And I found that, wow, it's just so much more easier. So I'll do sometimes custom, whoever has or bracelets or stock, sometimes I'll do a custom card for them.
Mhm.
And so I found Canva a really good place to do that. So it's sending artwork to the printer, so making sure when the order goes out, each one has a story card. I started incorporating QR codes now.
Wow.
So the QR code will either go to my website where they can read more info, or it can go to I also uploaded my chalk drawings to YouTube. And since the chalk drawings are also stories that are applicable to maybe the character in the jewelry, it will link to a QR code that's showing a chalk drawing as well. So these things, is part of the packaging to send off. So it comes in little waves. So depending on what orders are or new jobs, it's just, picking the different charms to be made into bracelets, making sure they have tags. We're doing little tags now that say story and myth.
Mhm.
And it sounds simple, but they will run out, or so I have to make sure like we have everything so
Yeah.
that,
And they're such small pieces of inventory
yeah,
that you have to really be on top of that.
yeah.
Um, where can people contact you? Where can people connect with you and order?
Well, you're in Missouri, you can connect with me on my website,
Mhm.
which is www.storyandmyth.com.
Mhm.
And yeah, the pieces are made by persons with disabilities. Sometimes when it's a custom necklace, I started this thing where you can choose your insert beads
Mhm.
and your main guru bead.
Mhm.
And for example, they did this design, which is um, insert beads of sodalite,
Uh-huh.
and then their guru bead is the butterfly, and
Mhm.
then the end is the John Canoe tassel, which reminded me of the character in John Canoe called Pitchy Patchy. So I have
Mhm.
to just cut it. But that's not a combination I would have, like, I knew it was possible, but that butterfly could be an eagle or a Buddha, or and also those insert beads could be any gemstone. So
Right. Right.
um so what happens is team will partially string that. They'll probably string, this is Rudraska, also known as Shiva's tears.
Mhm.
And Shiva is a Hindu god, but these seeds are associated with him. Just like these seeds are associated with the Christian story with Job,
Mhm.
Job Bible. So they'll partially string it, and then I will kind of remove these and restring just for the custom ones.
Oh,
If
okay.
there's enough time, or if there's enough time,
Yeah.
I will pack everything up and they'll know, okay, so this gemstone is here and this and that.
Mhm.
So if I have ample time, I'll make them do it from start to end. But the tassel I'm attaching, they made, so, or they partially made.
Mhm. Very, very cool. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I've learned a lot about folklore and about how you do your business, and it's all incredibly inspiring, especially because you are doing things in a new way, in a fresh way that's accessible to people who may not, like me, for example. I haven't been living in Jamaica for a really long time, but like you said, you're connecting me to my culture. And that is, it's pretty awesome, especially in the year that we've just had, where we've been separate from everything, as it had been before. It was really quite a joy to watch um, your videos of the chalk drawings. And something else came to my mind about the chalk drawings. When you go to museums and they have videos of performance art, set up on these little screens, I wonder if you had ever considered these, you're translating oral history, and
Mm.
in doing the video, you are documenting it. And I wonder if you had ever thought about perhaps presenting them somewhere as a series or as, you know, an exhibition of some kind.
No, I haven't.
Hmm.
It's just been something I've just been doing in a little bubble, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And recently, um, using the drawings to be part of uh, the packaging now. So
Yeah.
we did something for a hotel. Um, it was a we had a friend of mine in Jamaica transferred to Kauai
Hmm.
and contracted us to do, bracelets and mask chains for this hotel in Kauai that she's working with. And we used the Job's tears or blessing beads and lava
Wow.
and the lava rock. And so we told the story of Pele, who's the Hindu goddess,
Hmm.
not Hindu, the Hawaiian goddess. She's a Hawaiian volcano goddess. And she represents change and creativity. And so I told that story in chalk. And so the end chalk drawing is the card that would accompany the bracelet or the mask chains.
Hmm.
And there's a little QR code that will go to the story of it happening. So that's what I kind of started doing, but I archived them. They're all uploaded to YouTube as well.
Oh, okay.